Welcome to another edition of Spark the Conversation. This is your host, Mark, the Spark, and let's get into today's news. Our first topic that I want to get into today comes right from the White House. We got a fresh report about the drones in New Jersey. So everybody has been hyper-focused on this for a long time. It started early in December under the Biden administration. There were civilians, law enforcement, some even military members noticing an abundance of drones in the sky. And there were a lot of different reports of lights, speed of travel, the size of these drones being more than just commonplace. I talked about the lights, but it was all just weird. It was people being chased by them, hovering in odd locations, whatever. And, I take these things with a grain of salt because, there are so many conspiracy theories out there. And when people start to focus on something like that, it obviously gets blown out of proportion. And then when people are tuned to looking for something, they're going to find what they're looking for. It's like confirmation bias, right? So there's a report out of the White House today basically saying that these were all authorized by the FAA, and it was a mixture of hobbyists and research drones that were in this area, and that these are not enemy drones. So I take it all with a grain of salt. Even that report, regardless of which administration it comes from, obviously it's in their best interest to cover their butt and make it look like there's no foreign entities inhabiting or invading our airspace. So take it as you will. The point I want to make today with this news story is which administration inspires the most confidence in you and the people. And so I have two different clips based both different administrations. So Kareem Jean-Pierre, who was the press secretary of the Biden administration, and then Carolyn Levitt, who is the press secretary for Trump. And I just want to put them. I want to put them side by side. Well, one first in order, chronologically. So KJP first, and then I will do Carolyn, and you can see who you would trust more, and This is actually goes back to DEI too, like picking the best person for the job versus picking somebody based on their race or sexual orientation, or whatever you want to go by. But it's a DEI. She was a DEI hire, and this is a perfect example of why that's a terrible idea. So here's those two clips, one after the other.
About drones. There have been repeated drone sightings in the Northeast, especially in New Jersey. These are not small drones, some of them pretty large. They're flying at low altitudes, they're flying in flocks. Has the president been briefed on this situation?
So we are certainly aware, the president is aware. So we're closely tracking the activity and coordinating closely with relevant agency, including DHS and FBI, to continue to investigate these incidents. Don't have anything beyond that to share. Obviously, this is something that DHS and FBI are tracking very, very closely, and so I would have to refer you to them directly, but aware. Keeping an eye out and looking into the incidents that you just mentioned.
Have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office from President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy.
So I think it's pretty obvious from those two clips which of the two administrations seem more trustworthy and which of the press secretaries is not only the better one, but also the more believable one. Now, ultimately, I think that they both are saying the same thing. I think they're both trying to explain away something they really don't know the whole answer to, But if you're just looking at pure, like the ability of the press secretary to explain issues to the press is key. And, Carolyn Levitt is like clearly the winner in this segment. I have a couple more clips of her. This is one of her first real press conferences from the White House, and she's going to go through a couple different things that she's talking about. One is freedom of the press and how they're going to be changing the press briefing room, which is going to be key in the upcoming 4 years, because, and this was something that we kind of thought might happen, is the entrance of podcasters into the press briefing room. And so she talks about a certain seat that they've got reserved for kind of like an independent journalist, or at least that's how they're setting this up. And I would guess it's probably going to be a rotating basis. This seems more like a pilot program, really. So there's just one seat there right now, and the criteria she'll go through, but you have to produce news-related content. You're not working for a network, and you're paying for your own travel, basically, so you're not like bought and paid for by the establishment media. And it kind of, the purpose is to, again, bring transparency and trust back to the White House. It's clearly been lost in the last 4 years, and they're trying to regain it. And by regaining it, they're just adding sunlight, right? Best disinfectant is sunlight. And the best way to truth and trust is transparency. And I think that this White House has really put themselves out on that path, and they've been pretty successful in it. You can just feel it in the air and how they handle things and how laid back they are. They're not feeling pressured. They're not feeling stressed by everybody telling different stories. And, the fact that they all tell the same story, it not only tells that the cooperation is better, the communication is better, it tells you that they're more trustworthy. They don't have anything to hide. And, there's another piece to it too, where we see that Biden administration really struggled to work together, partially because Biden wasn't capable of doing the job. And I think that they were trying to limit down the number of people in the staff who actually knew who was running the government, because Biden clearly wasn't capable of making decisions. He was barely capable of walking to and from Marine One helicopter. So I don't know that Karine Jean-Pierre was really given access to the president to be able to know what the policies were and how to answer the questions, which is why she was always struggling to cover for him. Part of the problem also was that you're trying to cover a lie. So when you're trying to cover a lie, it's obviously going to be a lot harder, which alludes to the other segment that I'm going to share from the same press conference. So I'll just do them back to back, but they are two separate clips, where one of the media personnel asks Carolyn if she was going to be trustworthy and how they knew that what she was saying was trustworthy and that they could trust her. And she just said, well, I'm telling you that I'm going to be trustworthy. And to be honest, why should I trust you? Which is absolutely true. I mean, if you poll the American public, and the polls are already out there, the trust in the mainstream media is at an all-time low. So I would bet that if you put them side by side, trusting the mainstream media or trusting the White House, I think that the White House would win at this point. Heck, Congress might win, and people regularly poll with a distrust for Congress. So it's interesting that the mainstream media is putting this out there as a question to her when they really should be asking it of themselves. Here's those two clips, and it shows the qualifications of this press secretary as opposed to the last one.
Previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House. And you can apply now on our new website, whitehouse.gov. new media. Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex. So in light of these announcements, our first questions for today's briefing will go to these new media members whose outlets, despite being some of the most viewed news websites in the country, have not been given seats in this room.
Thanks, Caroline. A question that we've asked your predecessors of both parties in this job. When you're up here in this briefing room speaking to the American public, do you view yourself and your role as advocating on behalf of the president or providing the unvarnished truth that is, not to lie, not to obfuscate to the American people?
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. That is my job. And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people, and that's exactly what this administration is doing. It's correcting the lies and the wrongs of the past 4 years, many of the lies that have been told to your faces in this very briefing room. I will not do that. But since you brought up Truth Seek, I would like to point out, while I vowed to provide the truth from this podium, we ask that all of you in this room hold yourselves to that same standard. We know for a fact there have been lies that have been pushed by many legacy media outlets in this country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. We will call you out when we feel that your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House. So yes, I will hold myself to the truth, and I expect everyone in this room to do the same.
And Caroline,
So you can see she kind of was saying what I explained before, that, you can trust us because we're being transparent, and it's easy to be up here and be transparent with you because I'm working for an administration that's trustworthy. So it goes to explain that, she's partially is obviously because she's more qualified than her predecessor, but she does make the point that it's not all her, that it kind of makes the job a lot easier when you're working for an administration who is trustworthy. Now, the other thing is, because President Trump has such a better ability than Biden to be able to talk to the people and talk to the press directly, she doesn't have such a heavy lift either. However, it is a lot more complicated because they have to make sure they're on the same page, because, Trump has a habit of speaking off the cuff, and he's very forthcoming with information and is willing to answer anything at any time, basically. So it just makes it a little bit more critical that the White House press secretary needs to be on the same page with him. Now, it seems like she's, spending a lot of time with President Trump, so that, going to different press meetings and public events. So they probably have a lot of time talking, and she's probably looking over his shoulder a lot when he's in those situations. So she's going to be there regularly, and it makes it easier to be on the same wavelength when you work side by side with somebody so regularly. So I think this will work out well. I think it's going to bring a little bit a lot of trust back to the White House, and the qualification, it'll just be so much less painful to listen to a press conference, that's for sure. So that's good to see. In other news, I want to go back to the border. We've got some funny clips that are just amazing to listen to, I guess. One from The View, and it's about Sunny Hostin trying to explain to us how people crossing the border illegally are not breaking the law. And she goes into something about it being a civil case and not legal. And I just don't know what she's talking about. And I don't know what she's talking about because she doesn't know what she's talking about. And then she's trying to explain how, illegal immigrants are less likely to commit crime than citizens. And I would just love to see the stats on that. I mean, if the stats are saying that, it's probably because, like we saw yesterday, they are letting dangerous criminals out on the street just because it's a sanctuary city, and they have some policy against holding them no matter what they do. I mean, this guy was involved in sex crimes with a minor, and they had them out on the street. And thank God ICE was out there to get them and put them behind bars and send them back home, because we do not need people like that on our street. That is, like Tom Homan said, that, this is the policy of Sanctuary City, and what results from that policy. It's bad policy. It's dangerous for citizens. So thank God we have Tom Homan there as the borders are, heading up ICE and getting dangerous criminals off the street, since the city's government refused to do that. So here's that clip of The View, Sonny Hostin, schooling us all on the legalities of illegal immigration.
Criminal undocumented migrants.
Well,
If he focuses
I don't know
on those-
anybody in the world. Yeah, I don't know anybody in the world who wants to keep the criminals. I don't know anybody.
That's where you should be focused.
Can I say something? Because, we keep on talking about criminals and immigrants being criminals. And I just want people to understand what the facts are and the stats are, is that undocumented immigrants are much less likely to have committed crimes than American citizens. American citizens commit more crimes than anyone who is undocumented. I also want to make the point that an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal because he or she is undocumented. That is a civil offense. So to call people illegal is, in and of itself, I think, xenophobic and racist.
So as you can see, another intelligent statement from The View, as always, but enjoyable nonetheless to see what our elites from Hollywood have to say about the legal system. Now, another pointing to Hollywood, again, we have a clip that's going around the internet right now, and it is strange, unusual, a little entertaining, mostly painful, and just unbelievable that these people are so out of touch. So Selena Gomez has posted this. She posted on her social media. I think it was her Instagram account. But then she took it down because she got hammered on it. And then she reposted it. So I don't know if she just wanted to get rid of all the comments making fun of her because it seems ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. But she posted it back up again, and so that we can see it for our viewing pleasure. And I'll roll the clip, and then we'll talk about it.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. The children. They don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
So, the part of that clip, that was actually, somebody modified it a little bit to point out the hypocrisy and the insanity, but they added a couple pictures of people who have been killed by illegal immigrants, and so it's just the point that is being made is that she cares about the illegal immigrants. Apparently, I guess that's what she's crying about. She really doesn't make it clear. She's talking about children, although no children have been deported as of yet. If they are, it's going to be because their family's being deported, and it's either it's like Tom Homan said in his one of his original statements when he was asked if families can be kept together, and he said sure they can. They'll be deported together as a family, and then they'll stay together. And it's either that or the kid stays, and it's basically like, the country has adopted a child and taken him from this family, which is not a good situation. So she's crying about kids. We've also seen these clips of teachers saying they're going to defend their kids in schools, and that ICE shouldn't be coming into schools and taking kids, which also has not happened. This is all lamestream media propaganda trying to stir fear about things that are not happening. So she's crying. The other aspect of this too is she's crying. She looks terrible. What woman wants to be videotaped crying and then put it on the internet for all to see? This is just the gall of People in Hollywood who think they're so self-important that even in the most terrible state they could be in, where they're crying and they look absolutely horrible, they want to be on the internet to tell you what you should think and to try to show how much they care, right? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that you're willing to put something like this out there shows how ridiculous you are. She came from nothing, and because there's a couple posts going around too of her house that when she moved to the U.S. and now her house, the nice house she has. She went from living in a little small ranch, maybe like a 1,200, 1,500 square foot ranch, to a beautiful sprawling mansion. And that happened in America. The only reason that she is who she is because of America, because the freedom to move through the class system that exists nowhere else in the world. Nowhere else in the world could she have done that. And yet she still wants to hate on America, hate on Americans' policies that are really protecting her wealth. The other statement too we keep seeing is, who's going to do the jobs? Who's going to do the farm work? Who's going to clean the bathroom? Who's going to work at Home Depot? This is not the right saying that those people work in those places and that's all they're good for. This is people on the left, because this is what they think. They always point to us as being the racists, just like Sonny Hostin was saying, that we're the racist, we're the xenophobes. But guess what? You guys are the ones who keep pointing to these menial, trivial jobs. Well, as you would say, I wouldn't say they're trivial. I know they're important, but they're not just done by immigrants. Immigrants have done all kinds of different jobs. They work construction, sure, but they can work through the class system like every other person in this country, and they can be engineers. They can go to school. But if they're here illegally, they're held down because we have to have limitations on the people that are in our country. So if you want to fix the system, like Tom Homan was actually talking about this today, where he says, if you don't like the law, go to your Congress people and have them change the law. But my job is to enforce the law as it is, and that's what I'm going to do. Until it's changed, then I'm going to enforce it as it is. And it kind of goes to the incentive structure. You got to ask yourself, there's a lot of talk about illegal immigration and how the system's broke. But when was the last time you saw a bill come across with any seriousness that actually addressed the changes that needed to be made? I haven't seen it, because the incentive structure isn't there. The incentive structure for the Democrats, if they fix the immigration system, what are they going to complain about? What are they going to point to us and call us racists for? The Republicans would love to fix the system, but first you got to fix the border, because without a border, why bother with the immigration system if you're just going to let people in? It's absolutely ludicrous. It's crazy. It's crazy. So fix the problems the right way if you want it fixed. Otherwise, we're going to do it the way that it's written, because that is the law. That is the purpose of the law. Unlike the left, who wants to tear down all the structures that make America what it is, they want to just destroy everything. And that's the truth of the matter. So our next topic I want to talk about. So President Trump just passed an executive order, or signed an executive order, I should say, that is banning transgender military members from being active. So, and there's a lawsuit now. So transgender people are suing to stay in the military. And I have a clip here and then a little segment from Pete Hegseth's book, which he is the Department of Defense secretary. And it talks about trans people in the military. So this clip is from Band of Brothers, War on Warriors, and he's talking about the Obama administration. He says, in 2016, the Obama administration conducted a study to test whether it was a good idea for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell to allow transgender soldiers to openly serve in the military. That study found that post-surgery transition soldiers would be non-deployable for 238 days or 34 weeks. When this report was brought to then incoming President Donald Trump's attention, he promptly banned transgender soldiers from serving. However, in 2022, Biden officials reversed the policy, issuing 1300.28, which not only waived 300 days for post-op transgenders, but also allowed for DoD hospitals to conduct laser hair removal, voice feminization surgery, facial and body contouring procedures, breast and chest surgery, and genital surgery. This is on our soldiers. Government funded. They waived grooming standards and uniform standards for transgender soldiers as well, so lowering the standards just for them. They then waived the standard that previously disqualified first-term elective surgery. This change to the standards meant that men and women could join the military for the express purpose of transitioning, be non-deployable for a year, and take life-altering hormone therapy that would mean they would be non-deployable unless the military could guarantee the supply of medication. Depending on what country they're in, right? Third world countries too. Yes, your tax dollars pay for mentally unstable boys to become girls, chop off their body parts, sit out of training for a year, pay for ongoing medical treatments, and demand everybody call them a new name and gender, pronouns. Man, I wish I had one of those super soldiers in my platoon in Iraq, obviously. That last line is satire, facetious. But, I mean, the points are all there. They're lowering the standards, got rid of the standards, funded crazy medical transitions, and then, which basically made them so they couldn't even serve. And now these people are going to sue to stay in the military when they were just there, some of them anyways, when they were just there to get a free medical treatment and lifelong necessity of medical care. These military members would literally need medical care for the rest of their life. I mean, this is why I believe the medical industry is so hyped up over this and promoting this craziness, because figure you do that to a little kid and they are your patient for life. They need either testosterone or estrogen, puberty blockers, many physical surgeries. It's costing tens of thousands of dollars. And of course they want you to pay for it, and they want you to change how you address them. But you cannot tell me that makes them just as effective or a more effective soldier. It clearly diminishes the capacity. And you know it diminishes the capacity of their fighting ability because they've reduced the standards for those people. If they weren't a lower standard of a fighter, they wouldn't have to reduce the standards to allow them in and to stay in, to serve the military. They tell you the answer right there. It's right in front of your face. So Trump has instituted this change. Pete Hegseth is going to move it forward and make sure that we have the most lethal fighting force in the world, which is what we need as the strongest power of the world and the guide of morality in the world. We need to have this, and we need to fix the military, and this in turn is going to solve the recruitment crisis that they're having. And the military is not the only one affected by these transgender policies. But first, I want to bring, there's a senator, a representative, who is transgender. So she's a dude. She's a dude. He's a dude. Representative Sarah McBride, who that's what he goes by now. He's I think the first transgender person serving in the House. And we've got a clip from him talking about how that the U.S. government is targeting these people and whatever she's got to say, or he's got to say. Here's that clip.
including how to bring down costs. That being said, it is hard to ignore the president's executive order signed a week ago today that targets the trans community. The impact of it is still not totally clear. Some experts in the law say that parts of it are going to need legislative approval. What is your understanding so far of the impact of this executive order?
Well, as you mentioned, it's not entirely clear the full parameters of this executive order. It's clearly not abundantly clear why the president would prioritize this as a day one or day two action. But let's be clear that when you remove the ability of transgender people to have identity documents that reflect their gender, it is essentially forced outing for transgender people when they are going about their days, when they're trying to travel, when they're going internationally in the case of passports. And so it has a really serious consequence, not just for the dignity, but for the safety of transgender people. I think we also have to be clear, though, that these attacks are politically motivated. These attacks are part of a strategy of misdirection and distraction by the Republican Party, because every single time you see them go after trans people, yes, we have to acknowledge the harm that they have on the community impacted, but we also have to recognize what they are doing with their right hand, because I can guarantee you that when they're going after trans people with their right hand, they're picking the pocket of American workers, they're fleecing seniors, they're undermining unions, and this is all part of that politics of misdirection and distraction and division.
Congresswoman, shortly after your election, House Speaker Johnson made headlines banning you from using the women's restroom. You said at the time you disagreed, but will follow the rules, adding, quote, "I'm not here to fight about bathrooms." I just have to ask, just overall, how have you been treated by folks in Congress on both sides of the aisle?
Well, the grandstanding that we've seen by some members of Congress is the exception. Most members have been respectful, have been warm and welcoming. Certainly all of my colleagues on the Democratic side and most of the Republicans that I've had the opportunity to interact with have been respectful and professional. I was proud to be the first freshman Democrat to introduce legislation this Congress, bipartisan legislation protecting consumers from predatory practices by so-called credit repair organizations. So I'm already hitting the ground running, bringing Democrats and Republicans together to work on the real issues that matter. And that's despite a handful of Republicans who are making a scene about my service.
So he talks about being targeted and how a handful of Republicans are attacking his service and going after the policies that support people who have a mental illness that makes them think that they're the other gender than they really are, which is sad and should be treated. But, you know, we play these games where we pretend these people are fine and we're actually doing them a disservice. He talks about also going back to the military, where you talk about making sure these people follow a standard and that we have a strong fighting force, and the argument is again that there's no evidence that says transgender people reduce the fighting power of the military, and I would argue that there's a lot of things that we have regulations over that there's not evidence of. But also that there's not evidence of it because we haven't looked for it. I mean, it's like the COVID vaccine, right? There was no evidence that it did damage because we didn't look for it. And, but there are also things that we can regulate just out of common sense. I think it's pretty common sense to say that somebody who is on a medical treatment that is, doing serious changes to your physical and mental, how you act, respond, visibly you're changing how you look. Girls then grow hair, boys can grow breasts, on different hormone treatments. And there's a ton more going on underneath the surface. It affects your mental health. I saw somebody go through it, somebody who tried to transition. And unfortunately, it did not work out well for that person. I feel bad because she was a nice young girl and was confused, ended up transitioning and getting on drugs because it was affecting her mental state, and ended up overdosing and passing away. which is terrible, but it's because she was lied to. And these people are being lied to as well, and it's dangerous to them. So along that same line, people with that mental illness, which is exacerbated by these hormones, which are doing crazy changes to the mind and body. You want that in your military? Look how many school shooters, mass killers lately have had this kind of gender ideology. They're tied together. And I know the government's trying to cover it up because it's not popular, but I think it's pretty clear at this point. We do not need proof any more than we can already see. We see the proof. And it's sad and it's dangerous, and we need to get these people the help they need and not just affirm their inability to see the truth and accept the fact that they need help in a different way. Anyway, so like I was saying, this isn't something that just affects the military. I have another clip of a person who is claiming to be a girl and now is on a girls' track team. And you can see in this clip of this race, she's just blowing these people away. And I'm going to show you a picture of her here in a second. I'll put it up right now. So this is Sadie Schreiner, and you can just tell, or at least that's the name that this person is going by right now. You can tell looking at this person needs help. You can see tattoos on his face, underneath his eyes, a heart, I think, just below the temple. This and I don't know if the lipstick looks like something on his nose, across his nose. These are permanent. I don't know about the lips, if that's a permanent thing or just lipstick, but this is a person who needs somebody to help them. This is not normal. And you have to just feel bad for somebody like this, who is clearly suffering and is projecting to the world that this is what they need and that they're happy. I don't believe it. You can tell me till you're blue in the face that you're happy looking like that. I will never believe you. I won't. I will feel sorry for you. I will pray for you. I will pray for this world that we stop doing this to people and stop telling people these lies that is hurting them. But I will not believe that you are happy in this way. I'm sorry, you just can't convince me. So here's a clip of the race, and tell me this is a fair. So you can see the race starting. He's one of the middle racers as they go around, and this is from the person's Sadie's Instagram page. So the text put over the top is not mine. That was part of the video, but you can see coming around the corner that he's taken a huge lead, and the second person in second place isn't even close. And that probably is a record holder, would be my guess. And so it's just not a fair race. You can't tell me that's a fair race. And Sadie, as a man, I didn't look up the stats, but I'm sure was nobody really to be even talked about in the men's racing. And this is not the first time this happened. It happened with Leah Thomas in swimming. And Leah Thomas, I can't remember what his real name was, but was clearly crushing the girls in swimming. And again, he was nobody to talk about in male swimming. Riley Gaines, who's been quite outspoken on this issue, and she's been awesome, has talked to this point. And they gave preference, and she was an all-star swimmer in the girls' side. Absolutely. And she was being crushed by this guy. Of course. I mean, they say, oh, if you take enough hormones, it knocks down your testosterone to that of a normal woman. And the fact that they use those terms acknowledges that they know they're not normal women. But even if that was true, they still have the bone structure of a man. They still have the lung capacity of a man. They still probably have the size of a man, of being a man, which is an advantage in both running and swimming. And so they maintain a lot of the features that gives them an upper leg, an upper hand in these sports. So it still makes it unfair. It makes it dangerous. There was a girl who was playing volleyball, and you think, oh, volleyball's a non-contact sport, right? But she got a ball spiked to her head and was concussed and ended up with some permanent brain damage from volleyball because of the unfair nature of having men and unsafe nature of having men who think they're women playing in girls' sports. And there will be many more examples like this if we keep down this path. It needs to stop. It's dangerous and unfair, and it's anti-women. Like really, a lot of these same people pushing this narrative are the same people who were pushing for girls' sports to begin with, when it didn't exist, for fairness and safety. And now they're going the exact opposite. Feminism is taken a full circle to be, again, pro-man, to be misogynist against women. I mean, it's insane. It's crazy. We have to get back to some kind of sanity, and we have to get back to what's fair and right and good and true, which hopefully President Trump is going to lead us towards. He also wrote a ban on transgender surgery for minors. Again, a common sense approach. This is one of the top issues that pushed President Trump into the White House. Like probably number 3. So it was like the border, economy, and then the gender identity crap. People do not like this. There's only a very small but loud portion of the far left pushing this agenda. And I'm not really sure why it's moving the whole Democratic Party so far. But if they're not going to course correct and learn from their mistakes, they're going to end up losing again back where they started from in this past election. And it's going to carry on, and I hope it does, because this is not the only opinion that they hold that is terrible, but it is one of the worst at this time. They need to course correct if they're going to save their party, except in the far left areas of the country. But other than that, they're going to lose on a whole, because the country doesn't like this. In fact, most of the people that they want to illegally immigrate here don't like this and don't want it, which is ironic. And they'll have to find that out the hard way, I guess. So that's that. Trump's moving again on some issues that are important to the country, issues that he promised to move on, and it's good to see. So in our last news story of the day, the new Secretary of Transportation was confirmed today. He's a former representative, Sean Duffy, and he won his confirmation 77-22. So he pretty much skated through, and he used to be a Fox Business host, Wisconsin congressman. He was elected 5 terms and received some bipartisan praise. He was, from Wisconsin, so he dealt with many lakes, the Great Lakes in particular. And so his time comes from being a lobbyist after resigning from Congress in 2019. So he lobbied on behalf of several domestic airlines to try to compete with the competitiveness of Middle Eastern counterparts, but was short-lived after once the pandemic hit. So he's got some aviation expertise. I really haven't heard too much else about him, but I'm sure he dealt with some stuff, in his state being a senator or a congressman, and we'll see how he does in that position. It's going to be pretty hard to do worse than the current person in there, or former, I should say. He who took his paternity leave for his gay husband's baby that they adopted, which was kind of interesting. and he's kind of like a leading candidate for the Democratic Party right now because the bench is pretty short. And that, of course, was Pete Buttigieg. And the guy disappeared. I mean, how many train crashes, derailments did they have during his term? Not saying that necessarily his fault, but man, he did not address them. I don't even think he made a statement on them. There was multiple in a very short time period, and it took him a long time to visit any of the scenes of those crashes, and they really didn't even address some of the causes of what those crashes were. One was overheated wheel bearing, I think, and there's different sensors that they use on the tracks to determine that kind of stuff to look for that kind of issue and try to prevent it from becoming catastrophic. But they didn't talk about it. He wasn't out there talking. It was basically non-existent. So shouldn't be too hard for him for Sean to do better than Pete. And we'll see. I mean, maybe there'll be no issues. We won't even really hear from him. This one of those jobs that, yeah, they deal with a lot of roads and bridges and stuff like that, but until there's some kind of catastrophe involving one of those forms of transportation, we don't necessarily hear from the person in that position. So we may not really, I guess we should hope that we don't have to hear from him anytime soon. One of the big holdups recently was just as he was going through his confirmation hearing, Trump put a hold on any grants, like trillions of dollars of grants and federal government subsidies that were going out to, and some of which affected roads and bridges and transportation projects. Kathy Hochul, the governor of the People's Republic of New York, she came out against that, saying that it's hurting jobs and all this stuff. I think it's more likely that this is just a standard procedure of a president moving in and trying to stop a bunch of money from going out where he doesn't know. I think it was blocked by a federal judge, of course, which continues the payments. I think Trump will be able to work through it and probably figure out a way to at least slow some of these payments going out. But it became a controversy during Sean Duffy's confirmation, so that's why some people switched to the last minute. But he still sailed through pretty cleanly. We're still awaiting Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s confirmation hearing, which will be pretty spicy coming up later. It'll be interesting to see how that goes through. There's people on both sides of the aisle that are concerned about his role and some of the things he's said and stood for over the years. I have a feeling that he'll tone down a lot of that going into this position, or at least during the confirmation hearings, but it still should be interesting and pretty spicy to watch, so we're looking forward to that. So that's all the news that I have for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, leave a comment, or share it with your friends. Appreciate any listeners that are out there. And don't forget to go out and volunteer for something meaningful and spark the conversation.